us to ask any questions. I'm Jamae Crowder. I'm the Director of Development with Tigerman, and I'm happy to introduce both Toya and Joanne, and they will be speaking today about our topic, which is about stress and, basically what I think we're all going through right now. It's obviously a very hard time in our lives for most of us. So just kind of, I'll let Toya and Joanne kind of introduce themselves and take it away from there. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to chat with us, or after we will also take live questions. Okay, go ahead, Toya.
Okay, I want to welcome you back to Ask Toya. The purpose of this Zoom is to give you an opportunity to express what's going on in your life. Like I said before, I left school on March 13th, which happens to be Friday the 13th, never imagining that would be the last time I would actually be in a school building. So it's almost like we woke up in the twilight zone. So these Zoom meetings are to allow you to express what's going on in your life. Joanne is a life coach, and she just is a wonderful wealth of information to alleviate anxiety and during this pandemic. So I'm really going to turn it over to Joanne so she can give you some ideas on how to handle stress and anxiety. It's up to you, Joanne.
Thank you, Toya, and thank you, everybody. I just want to start out by appreciating you for taking the time out of your day to get together and talk about this topic, which really has two avenues or two invitations, one of which I'll talk more in depth about. But the idea that if you are struggling with anxiety, whether it's the thoughts in your head or more typically the feelings in your body that signify anxiety is present, that it's really an opportunity. It is an invitation to put your attention on what needs nourishment in your life, what needs to be different, an MO perhaps that needs to be upgraded. And the other path is to really be stuck in this place of uncertainty, which brings about fear, often of the unknown, and to spiral downward. So we'll put some attention on that as well. Let's face it, we don't necessarily need to have a global crisis to feel the impact of anxiety. Many of us, me included, have battled with anxiety and know full well that it can feel like it's on the level of global when you're living in your very own day-to-day state of anxiety. So I just want to, before we jump right in, I just want to pose a question to you if you're willing to share, and this is by way of the chat. In your experience of anxiety, where is it, if you've noticed, that it comes up in your body? And I say that because I'll make it a point of saying this again later, that our thoughts, they originate in our mind, and then we feel the experience of those thoughts in our body. So for example, I have a client that described feeling the fear, feeling the anxiety as this very tightly wound knot in his stomach. I had another that described it as a boulder sitting on her chest, making it hard to breathe. So we all have our different ways of experiencing it, whether it's in our throat, our chest, our belly, or elsewhere. So I'm just curious if you would put in the chat there what your experience in your bodies might be as related to anxiety. Headaches, very common. I have a friend that experiences digestive upset. Chest tightness, absolutely. And I'm just curious, Jamae, how many people do we have on the call?
It looks like we have a good handful, about 10.
Okay, so you all know that from your own experience that stuff shows up in your body. You know, when we're nervous about something, sometimes we get butterflies. Another person is saying goosebumps, yawning, watery eyes, tension in the body. Yeah, so we can see, you know, just from 3 different people, myself being number 4, like it can show up in many different ways. And again, the word invitation comes to mind is um, to get curious about what our bodies are trying to tell us so that we can then take some steps that move us in the direction of moving out of this anxiety or stress response and into a relaxation response. So today we're going to talk about, you know, all about how anxiety impacts your mind, your body, your life, ultimately, why it's so easy to go down the rabbit hole, that place of what if this and what if that, and how to transform and even leverage anxiety so you can attract exactly what it is that you want in your life. So before we go on, I just want to introduce myself. Yes, my name is Joanne Houston, and I've had a career in health and wellness for well over 30 years. I've worn many different hats at different times, ranging from physical therapist to personal trainer to owner of a pre- and postnatal fitness business, and more recently on the business side of fitness and fitness franchising. And that was a role that had me wearing many, many different hats that ultimately culminated in a place of extreme anxiety, with me experiencing, as I'm talking to you about, thoughts in my head, reflecting in my body, going through things like headaches and stomach upset and hair loss and feeling like being in a state of jitteriness all throughout the day. So, you know, how did I end up here talking to you about leveraging anxiety? After all, for years, I was living with this sense of dread, feeling like I wasn't doing enough, feeling like I should be doing more, feeling so anxious I couldn't sleep night after night. And if you've ever had trouble with sleep, you know how sleep deprivation can really make everything else exponentially worse. I was feeling paralyzed at times with worry, but today I live with a sense of ease. I sleep really well, and my body is strong and healthy. And I have this full head of hair, although oh, that's bad. I never had that view before. It's graying fast. But it wasn't always this way. You know, I spent, as I said, decades in fitness and wellness as a personal trainer and a therapist. And, you know, it became about a year and is it a year and a half or so? But it was July 28th, 2018 to be exact. And I just want to invite you now to kind of come into a room. I'm going to invite you into this room to experience what I experienced. And from what I've been told, when you just are in a relaxed state yourself right now, and you can just close your eyes and kind of take yourself with me, I think you'll get a really strong sense of my experience of anxiety. And I want to have you think of your own experiences of anxiety. What have been the thoughts? How has it shown up? Where has it led you? So with that, go ahead and close your eyes if you would like. You don't have to. But it was July 28th, 2018, and I was in this almost pitch black hotel room in Pennsylvania, the Pocono Mountains to be exact. And there was this sliver of moonlight that had come through the marginal divide of these 2 heavy blackout curtains. My kids were with me. They were sleeping as little kids do, with chest rising and chest falling and this steady rhythm of breath and breath in and breath out. There was just no effort, no stirring, just ease. That's what we typically see in kids. And as an adult, I felt really envious. I felt like, I just studied them and wondered, how do I get on board their angel train? And this term angel train was a term that came to me sometime much later from a very wise meditation teacher. And it's a term that she used to describe that window of opportunity to fall into a deep sleep, that restorative sleep. And I desperately needed a ticket to that state. It was, for me, I was just kind of holding on night after night. But here I was. It was the middle of the night, and I was wide awake again for a 4th consecutive night at this point, just worrying and stressing and pacing and unable to stop or even hit the pause button. Only this night it felt different. I was about to have an experience, unbeknownst to me, that was unnerving, to say the least. And in fact, I was really, really terrified. Prior to this, I had been looking forward to this 5-day vacation with my 2 kids, Jack, who was 12 at the time, and my daughter, Sophia, who was 10. And I was counting down the days and the hours, even the minutes, before I could deem myself on official release from what felt like a work prison, as I mentioned earlier, wearing many, many different hats in a very, very demanding situation, unable to turn it off at night, unable to check myself out of the physical office. The office came home with me in the brain. So I was looking forward to this vacation as a way to just take a breath. And truth be told, you know, my job was extremely demanding, as I've described, but I was the warden. And I was a warden that demanded perfection. I obligated myself to accept any project, big or small, to always say yes, to oblige, and to just plod on. And I had a heavy sense of guilt leading up to this trip because I knew I had not been giving enough of myself to my kids, and certainly not to myself. In fact, I ranked a distant 4th on the priority scale, with work coming first, my kids coming second, household responsibilities coming in 3rd. So, you know, sadly in that order. And I didn't like it. I very strongly resented it, but I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to get out of it as a single mom who had to keep supporting her kids. So, you know, at this point, my mind was always elsewhere. I'd be physically with my family, but my mind would be checked out. Phone call, email, text, presentation, a work trip. And my job was just getting the better of me in every way: energy, time, focus, commitment. And my sense of aliveness day to day, to be blunt, it felt like it was on life support. It really just felt like I was like a robot moving through the day, doing one task after the next. And it didn't have my sharp laser focus. You know, that's something that stress often blurs out. And that's what I found to be the case. It was like my focus was blurred out gradually by what felt like a brain fog, like an intruder creeping around inside my head, that felt unnerving, that felt unfamiliar. So these were the things that were kind of brewing in my mind and in my body. And I thought, okay, I can check out for these 5 days. We're going to hike, we're going to kayak, we're going to whitewater raft. And as life sometimes does throw curveballs, this one threw this point in time, I was thrown a curveball for 4 straight days of 4 straight rain. And at times it was pouring, like matching my emotions, like the sky couldn't stop crying. But we made the best of it. You know, we did the pool, we did the on-site arcade, we played a lot of ping pong. And on the inside, I was really vigorously protesting, like, this is freaking unfair. I can't catch a break. Why is the universe conspiring against me? And I emphasize that because we often go into what I call like victim mode, like the world is happening to me. The universe is conspiring against me. Where in fact, when we become empowered, or we get to a place of empowerment, when we view the universe or the world as conspiring to support us. You know, sometimes we have to go through the mud and it doesn't feel comfortable, but embedded within it is an invitation to shine the light on what's not working, and then to make some changes around that. So I was in this, you know, conspiracy theory kind of thing. Why is the universe conspiring against me? And with each day that passed, that silent protest about things being unfair, it just got louder and my heart got heavier, you know, knowing that the warden was coming back after his vacation and I would be cuffed, I'd be shackled, I'd be led back to my prison cell. And on top of that would be the regular mom duties, household responsibilities, laundry, dinner, lunches, things like that I'm sure you can relate to. So the thought of this all was like, it was a burden. It was a stress-inducing burden, and but it was familiar because this is the way that I was living my life. Movement next to the next to the next to the next task with a sense of urgency. So on this now 4th night, I anxiously watched the darkness give way to this early morning light. It did not feel like a day with fresh possibility. It was another day that I often speak of this to describe what it felt like, but another day that I would have to hold it together like this secretly agitated zombie with a smile on my face, because I did not want my kids to see the stress I was under. So put the smile on the face and keep moving. And I thought and I paced and I prayed and wondered, like, how do I fix this? Like, do I quit? Because that was not my way. I never quit anything. There was always this drive to stick with it, to keep grinding. And that was the cultural message at this particular job. And I knew that given my own, we all have our own way of being. And mine was to have that warden mentality. I knew that I would bring that warden to the next job, even if I did quit. Like, she might be quiet for a little while, but eventually she would crack the whip. So I rationalized staying put. My job held great financial promises for security, for freedom, if I could only hang on. And that was the question. Could I really hang on? Could I keep running this marathon at a sprint pace? Because the finish line wasn't in sight anywhere, and I didn't want to run anymore, period. So now on this 5th morning, that sliver of moonlight transformed into a sliver of sunlight, and my heart was racing and my throat felt constricted, and I was in this place of my head felt like it might explode. I had a sense of these words flashing with urgency about do it more, do it better, do it harder, do it faster. And it was all very overwhelming. And my way, I realized, like, man, I'm on vacation. I'm on vacation. And this is still right here. I knew my way of intensity was failing miserably. And my body, which was holding all of that anxiety, the fear, the emotion, my body was being hijacked. And I could only imagine, was this a gateway to a full-blown panic attack? Or was it just adversely reacting to another sleep medication? Or was it something else? So, in summary, it was like this tsunami of sorts was brewing in my veins, and I just didn't know what to do. I felt terrified, couldn't stop it. So there became a turning point. It would take a few more months of misery, of frenzied activity, of moments of extreme anxiety and strings of sleepless nights before I would come to this realization that something had to change, that there was just way too much at stake if I were to keep going this way. And, here I just kind of want to pause and again ask you in the chat if you have any parallels, if there are any similarities in your own stories. And it doesn't have to be, to the point where you're on the edge of a full-blown panic attack, but I want to kind of put my finger on the pulse of what you might have dealt with that felt, whether it was unnerving or scary or something else. Again, only if you feel comfortable sharing in the chat. So I'll just give a moment to have you think on that. And if not, we'll just keep moving along here, if that's okay.
Do you mind repeating the first half of your question? You cut out a bit. I couldn't hear you.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, so I was just asking if there were any parallels or similarities in your own experience of anxiety that you might relate to, with my story. And I just kind of followed that up by saying it may not necessarily be a realization of extreme anxiety or being on the verge of a panic attack, and maybe just, a feeling of this current of just unease or dis-ease. So I was just curious to know, to check in on the experience of anxiety, whether it's a moment, a particular crisis, or just kind of a general state of being. Or are you all good? And this is kind of stuff, it's I recognize it's not easy to just put out there because it's personal stuff. So yeah, I'm going to keep going, but just kind of reflect on your own experience of anxiety, because we'll be moving into how to transition out of that state and into one of more calm. And I see a chat. I see something here. 100%. My last job was the definition of being overworked and underpaid, and my boss was very manipulative and hard to approach. He had very little regard for anyone, so I always had anxiety about bringing up issues. Super, super common. Thank you for that. Yeah, and when our voices aren't heard, when we feel like we don't have a voice, that can make us feel as if we add to the burden of anxiety we already feel. Like, right? We want to get something out, we can't express for various reasons, and we have to kind of swallow it. And that can show up in our lives. It can kind of leak out through other channels of our body in ways that we would rather not have. And I'm going to be speaking to that as well. Sometimes people we work with, or family members or friends, they can be really draining on us, and we don't want to speak up and ask for what we need. And that can add a whole other layer to this discomfort that we feel. So, to do anxiety really, really well, you have to have a great imagination. So if you're an anxious person, it's a plus. You have a great imagination. When we're in the grip of it, we do a really excellent job of creating these bleak scenarios. Have you ever noticed how fast your brain can take you to that place that says all is going wrong, everything will go wrong, it's going to get worse? It's that rabbit hole phenomenon. And anxiety is really caused by this series of worrisome thoughts that we keep on believing. And yet, if we were to step back, we would notice that these worries are just that. They're worries. They're things, they're thoughts that haven't actually happened yet. So it's the anticipation of bad things happening that leads us to where we get stuck. So a prevalent thought pattern now is with this virus, right? What if I get sick? I might get sick. If I do get sick, then I can't work. If I can't work, I can't make money. If I can't make money, then I'm going to lose my house. So we go down the rabbit hole, and it can be really hard to get out of it on your own. And we end up being caught in this stress response. And there's a couple of levels to that. One being, you might have heard of this in the fight or flight response, but one being we get stuck in fight mode. So we're more agitated, we're easily agitated, we're short with our kids, we're short with colleagues, family members, and we want to lash out, we want to defend. The other piece is flee mode, which means we just want to get the heck out of the situation. We might want to not come out of our beds in the morning, we just want to put the covers on, or we just want to go hide in the closet. And the last one is the freeze mode. And that's where we just kind of get so stuck and we don't do anything. A whole day can go by and we have nothing to show for it, to say for it. We get caught up, frozen, if you will. So it's really interesting that our brains are uniquely equipped to deal with anxiety and feeling threatened, right? When we're in a stress response, we feel a threat, a sense of potential loss, whether it's loss of health, loss of finances, loss of career, loss of relationship. In fact, and this is a key point, that it doesn't know the difference between real and imagined threat. The response is the same. Our bodies are primed, they're queued up to respond to that threat, whether it's real or imagined. So we can be going through something really real and feel it, and we could be sitting and imagining about that thing happening and have the exact same response in our bodies. So it's the idea that the thoughts really control the emotions which lead us to feeling trapped or anxious or wanting to flee or wanting to fight. So I want to share a little bit of science here with you so you have a good understanding. I'm not going to go too much into it, but basically our brains have been described as having three separate parts, three little brains, if you will. And one of those brains is the critter brain. And that is the part of the brain, it's the most primitive part of our brain. It's all about survival. It's on automatic pilot. So we look to, the critter brain looks to keep us safe. The critter brain looks to resist any change because change can be scary. Change can be uncertain. So the critter brain will have you stay stuck in thoughts that will keep you where you are. So for example, me with my scenario in the hotel room, my critter brain was on fire. It was saying to me, don't leave that job. You're too old to start something new at this point. You don't have what it takes. You should stay put. Now, staying put was really just another life sentence, if you will, on misery, on intensity, on all that was not working, but it was all very familiar. As I said, this was familiar. It had become my way. So the critter brain does a really good job in its effort to protect us. And the protection is to just keep things the same. So those critter thoughts that come up that says, you can't do it, don't do it, stay there, that can really have us stay stuck with regard to the behaviors, right? To go to that same job, or whatever else we may be thinking, like around our health, that you won't be able to stick to a diet. Don't do it. Don't do it. So we stay stuck and we don't, or don't do that exercise program. It's too hard. It's going to hurt. So again, it keeps us stuck. It doesn't want change to happen. The other part of the brain is something called the limbic system. And this is the emotional part of our brain. So we can have the thoughts of ruin and destruction and gloom and doom that come from the critter brain. And then that creates these thoughts of fearful, anxious, scared. And we feel that emotion in our bodies. Again, throwing out that question, like, where do you feel your anxiety? It might be in the throat, it might be the belly, the chest, elsewhere. We feel it in our bodies. That last piece of the mini brain is the cortex, and that's the more evolved part of our brain. And this is such an important part because the cortex, because it's more evolved, it holds a menu of options, of choices. So when we're in a threatening situation, we can tap into, if we have access, I'm going to speak to that, we can tap into the cortex that says, okay, wait a minute, I've been in this situation before. I know how to get out of it. I know that I have some choices. Not everything is black and white. I can think in terms of and versus either or, right? Either I stay in this job or my family life suffers, and my family life suffers. So it has us in a very limited place when we're in the critter brain. And then we have in the cortex an opportunity to experience more options, so we don't feel so cornered in and so trapped. The cortex loves to learn. The cortex invites change and opportunity. Here's the takeaway. When we are stuck in an anxious spot, when we're stuck in the critter brain, we don't have access to the logical, reasonable thinking of the cortex. So we can't see our options. We can't see that we have a past that has experience of moving through difficult times before. And all of us, I'm sure, have had difficult times before in one way or another. And we've managed to come through it. Sometimes we survive it. Hopefully we thrive after we've come through it because we've learned something. The cortex has gotten involved. It just learned something. And then we can call upon that in a difficult time to come. So again, the idea here is that if we lose access to the more evolved part of our brain, the cortex, we kind of lose access to our choices. In addition, we lose access to creativity because we have our creativity in the cortex of our brain. We lose access to compassion for ourselves and often for others. And we lose connection to empathy towards other people and situations. So again, we really get stuck. And another not so thrilling thing here is that when we're in this stressed out state, we produce this hormone called cortisol, which is a stress hormone, that has us more vulnerable to being sick, that has us more vulnerable to keeping weight on our bodies. High level of cortisol, your body will be shut down from burning fat for fuel, particularly in the midsection of your body. So one of the greatest things you can do for yourself is to take yourself out of the stress response, especially if you're someone who's looking to lose weight. It's not necessarily to exercise harder or more or to eat better. It's to bring your stress level down so that the cortisol levels can come down and your body can start to burn fat for fuel. So one of the things that can happen moving on when we're stuck in this bad place, this place that doesn't feel good to our minds and to our bodies, we will naturally create a strategy for relief. We will move towards something which makes us feel better. That's us taking care of ourselves, with the caveat that this short-term strategy is often destructive. It doesn't work for us in the long term. So what do I mean? You all probably know this. When you're feeling bad, you might want to have a pint of ice cream. You might want to just get really, really busy and do other stuff so you don't have to think about how bad you feel. You might go to the bottle, right? I remember with my old job, when I would get home, almost before I took my coat off, I would pour myself a glass of wine with the intention of, I need a transition point. I need to take the edge off. I need to take this work day off. And that's how I did it. And it was a temporary, took the edge off. I feel better. But as a strategy in life, that doesn't work. It's destructive. So we have our vices that can show up as anything from overeating to drinking to gambling to compulsive doing of some kind, just this frenzied activity. And again, does it work in the long term? No. Is it a short term go-to strategy? Yes, but it really doesn't carry over very well. So point being here to everything that I've said, there's a silver lining in all of this, because that anxiety we feel with all the stuff in our bodies and in our brains, it really is this disguised invitation to what could be different in your life. It is the invitation to show up differently, to do something that's different. It's hard to give up what feels good in the moment to deal with something that doesn't, even if that go-to strategy is destructive. And that brings me, to this other challenge. So as a health coach, I look at anxiety as being really useful in two ways. And one, as I said, it alerts us to the fact that something needs our attention. That alert can serve to prompt us to act in a way that keeps us feeling safe or reassured, right? So if, for example, if I'm anxious about speaking in public, I'm likely to prepare thoroughly and to practice. Right? If I'm anxious about getting sick, I might be really diligent, really mindful about washing my hands and wearing a mask in public. So these are all healthy responses to anxiety that are based in action, right? But the other piece of it is as I said, this invitation to show up differently, to ask that question, what needs to change? What is the MO that needs an upgrade? My MO was intensity and speed. Right, that was an MO that needed to change. Is there a new perspective here that could be embraced? So I would suggest to you, again, to consider in your own life, like, what's needing to change? What keeps showing up that I don't like, that I don't want, that I want to change? What is it? Can I shine the spotlight on that? And it is so often the case that when we're able to do that, that is exactly the point that we begin to grow, that we begin to change and to evolve. So if you will, embrace the anxiety and the feelings it brings as this invitation that you're about to grow in some way personally. And that's an amazing experience and a unique perspective to bring to anxiety, because most people do want to run from it. They just want to feel better. So I want to hit on a couple of ways here, and I'm just watching time. A couple of ways here to shift the perspective on anxiety that might be helpful to you. So when we go into the down the road where we kind of can't see the light at the end, it is dark, there's a flavor of uncertainty to it. And with uncertainty comes fear of the unknown. What's waiting around the corner? What's at the end of the pier, so to speak? And that can have our critter brains lighting up like crazy. And if the critter brains lit up, we're stuck. But if we can shift the perspective to one of adventure, right? When we think of adventure, we're going on an adventure. Don't know what it is, but it has a flavor of excitement and enthusiasm and optimism about it. And this speaks very strongly to me, because when I got to the point of leaving the job that I was in, I could have gone down the road of uncertainty, and I'm sure I did at some point. I mean, I know I did. I absolutely did, because I stayed stuck there for so long. The uncertainty of moving out of it was just too much. Stay stuck, better, familiar. When I got past that and I said, all right, I got a ton of skill sets. I have a ton of experience. I don't know where I want to apply it. I don't know how do I want to apply it, but I'm going to trust that I'm going to figure it out, because in the past I have figured stuff out. So I'm going to trust that. And I'm going to see this as an adventure. What's waiting for me behind the curtain? I'm excited about that. So that shift in perspective allowed me to begin to move out of the stress response and into a relaxation response. And when you move into a relaxation response, again, you access creativity, menu of options, compassion, self-compassion, curiosity over judgment of yourself. And it's a whole new way of seeing the world around you. A second way to manage anxiety is to step back from it. It's so hard to do that because when we're in it, we're stuck. But when we can just take a breath, and this is where sometimes breathing techniques, literally meditation, taking a walk in nature, all these things that we kind of know we should be doing for ourselves, but we don't. This is where this stuff can be helpful. When you can create some space in the mind to step back and realize, as I said earlier, you have been through hard stuff in your life. You have been through challenges and you've come through it. So to ask those questions of how did I get through it then? Is that still a part of me now? Was I determined? Was I a fighter? Did I have endurance? Did I have the intelligence to ask for support and to receive the support? Sometimes we can ask, we have trouble receiving, especially women. So can I step back and evaluate, is this familiar? And can I borrow from the past to pull into the present to help catapult me through this and actually attract what I want this time? Attract what I want versus just repeat the same stuff over and over again. And this is where I feel very proud in having transitioned out of my last job into this health coaching business and life coaching business, which is the most impactful role I've ever had in my career, the most meaningful. How do I know? I wake up happy, I have energy, I get stressed, sure, but I know what to do, and I go back to that. I go back into relaxation response to access choice. This is how I know I'm in tune with my body. My body is telling me, you're good, versus that hotel room, you are so not good. So stepping back can be really, really useful in tuning into the body. What is the body telling you? Listen, think, get curious, not judgmental, right? Stepping back to see the light, so to speak, because when we're in it, it's dark, it's cloudy. When we can take a breath and step out, things light up. And we can trust, we can develop that muscle of trust that when we see the light coming through one door, the next door is going to open. Then the next door is going to open. Then the next door is going to open. And that's what will have you sleeping at night. Another way, third way, the control audit. So this is really important. Very easy to get caught up in what we can't control. If you watch the news a lot, it kind of feeds the what we can't control, right? That's why it's important not to stay too connected to the news around the clock. Get your news, move on. But when we have two paths, one path I can control, I can be in action versus I'm at the mercy of what I can't control, right? There's two ways to feel those experiences. When we step into what we can control, that we're a victim, that life is happening to us, it feels really bad. It shows up as anxiety. But when we step into, okay, what can I control? If I'm worried about my health or getting this virus, what can I do? Well, I can put my health as a priority. I can get in action around movement, not punishing movement, just movement. I can learn some breathing exercises. I can feed my body well. I can sit down and eat. I can prioritize, and I can also be very forgiving of myself that if I don't get all the shit done that I want to get done, it's okay. It's okay. These are tough times. This is an opportunity to be forgiving of yourself and compassionate towards yourself. And if I'm juggling 5 balls and I drop all 5 or 1, it's okay. Just pick up the balls. Again, not getting stuck in the judgment and the criticism and the perfectionism that holds us back. Moving on. And again, I just want to check in real quick to see if there's any questions or is this landing? Is this making sense to you? If you can just give me a thumbs up or a yes or a no, that would be helpful. Or if there's any questions. Oh, there is questions. There's comments. I haven't had the chat running side by side, so I apologize if there was a question as we went through. Long hours at work, long commute, moments to spend with my family. Okay. I love this. It's like looking back on how far you've come on the positive whenever you're in a lost place. Absolutely. That's the big stepping back, Joseph. Do you go by Joseph or Joe?
Doesn't matter.
Okay. Always try to be mature enough to know and understand that failure or making mistakes, big and small, is part of making progress and succeeding. Yes, absolutely. I love to reframe failure as feedback, right? Mistakes are feedback. Failure is feedback for what's not working. Whether it's not working right now, or this is not just the way for this particular situation. But once we go to failure, we tend to beat ourselves up. So interpreting feedback over failure is a great mindset shift that will have you feeling less anxiety.
Yeah,
So,
instead of like putting ourselves down like that, which is like an easy habit that I've done a lot. Like use the failure and mistakes to apply to like practice. And it doesn't matter like if you fail again and again and again and again, you still don't give up. You still put the same applyment, or you might learn something new from that and add it to it and apply to practice and just keep moving forward until you get something out of it.
yeah, really, really well said. That is spot on, because ingenuity only comes from failure. You have to make mistakes. There has to be trial and error. That's how we evolve, and that's how we land at something new. So the creative process, invention, ingenuity is rooted in making mistakes. It's the only way we get information so that we can course correct and move forward. So that's brilliant, that you can pause and have that reflection, and you can get curious rather than judge. That's a paradigm in my coaching practice, this idea of practicing curiosity over judgment. So I may have intended to eat well, but I was in a bad mood and those donuts looked good. Okay, isn't that interesting that I chose the donuts? Let's explore that. Am I sabotaging? Let's explore that. It's curiosity, not judgment. Judgment leads to being stuck and just piling more crap on top of more crap on top of more crap. That becomes really heavy in our bodies. So thank you, Joe. Another important, and almost wrapping up here, if we're any concern on time, which I'm watching it, faith in that which is greater than you. If you have a faith, when you're going through a crisis, personal or otherwise, taking the time and creating the intention to dig your heels into your faith can feel extremely grounding, whether that faith is in God, the universe, nature, something divine, something called source, whatever we want to call it. When you dig your heels into your faith, it gives you a grounding experience. And it's easy to move away from faith because we're so busy and it's just sort of our nature to get things done. But when we can take the time to step back and dig our heels into our faith and root into, we're not in this alone. There are forces much, much, much greater than ourselves that can rise up and support us, that can have the tide rising to support us versus the tsunami coming crashing down on us. On a personal note, I was raised Catholic. I'm very grateful that I had an exposure to God and faith. And it's not something that I've been in action around my whole life, but in times of crisis, I have. And my last crisis around my job, my heels are still dug way, way, way in deep. And that's been, as I said, such a grounding force. And when I wake up every day, for me, like I said, it's God. For you, it might be something else. It's perfectly fine, right? There's no right or wrong in this. But the idea that, God, please continue to increase my faith. Please continue to have me be aware of you in my life. And that might be something in nature. That might be a conversation I might have with somebody. But I ask for him to show up for me so I know that I'm supported and I'm not alone. And then on this webinar, every single coaching call I have, I ask to be a vessel. I ask to be a vehicle so that whatever words come out of my mouth are helpful to the person hearing, that it is what they need. And when I bring that energy, that vibe to my work, I have a great deal of peace about it. I experience so much less anxiety. And I used to give quite a few work presentations, and I'd be a nervous wreck. I didn't want to get it wrong. I didn't want to be judged. I'd do a good job judging me. I didn't want to be judged. But having that, I'm not in it alone. I'm not in it alone. It's a much more grounding force. So to wrap up, this is the last way that I want to highlight. Certainly there's not only 5 ways, but the last way to highlight managing or leveraging anxiety really is to understand that we have these different parts of ourselves. And these different parts of ourselves can exist at the same time, right? So we have that part of ourselves that says we should go to the gym and work out. Then we have the part of ourselves that says, oh, it'd be so much more comfortable watching Netflix on the couch, eating some Chinese food. So we can have these simultaneous opposing thoughts. And it's the same thing around anxiety. Things can feel chaotic and out of order. And at the same time, they can be very much in order, and a part of you knows that, right? Many of us, we have that feeling of unease around potentially getting the virus or having someone we love get the virus. That's scary. And then there's a part of us that says, common sense, wash my hands, isolate, quarantine, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. And people around me are going to be okay. So we have these conflicting thoughts, and that's normal. That is okay. So not beating yourself up for, you're going this way, you're going that way, like it feels all flighty. When you have the awareness that this is part of being a human. We're all of our parts at any given time. We're all of our ages at any given time. So if you were like a scared 7-year-old, afraid to mess something up or color outside the lines, that was me. They're going to stay inside the lines. That's important, right? You carry that 7-year-old. You carry the 17-year-old. You carry that wants to fit in. You carry the 27-year-old that's finding her way in the world or his way in the world. We're all of our parts at any given time. And there's an opportunity to embrace all of us with eyes wide open so that we can step into better and better versions of ourselves. So I just want to conclude with that. We can most certainly talk more about ways to get into action. The takeaways are that the 2 best antidotes that I have found to managing anxiety and the fear that comes with it is getting into action around that which scares me. Number 2 is to relying on and building upon the faith that I have. Again, for me, God, universe, I could probably say the same thing because there's a connection there, but whatever it is, that which is greater than you, to rely on that. And then those 2 things, fear is the only thing, think about this, fear is the only thing that gets smaller as you move towards it, right? If there's a big building and you're moving towards it, that building gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It starts out small, you get closer, it gets bigger. But as you move towards fear, it becomes smaller, especially if you move towards it in small, manageable steps. And that's what my coaching practice is all about. It's about small, manageable steps. Why? Large, sweeping changes makes the critter brain go, stop, I like it the way it is, it's too much. So it's about getting into alignment with what it is that you value in your life, whether it's financial freedom or landing in the right career or spending more time with your kids or whatever it is. It's about getting into alignment with what you value and moving in that direction in small, manageable steps with support and with accountability. That's what it's all about. So to wrap up that story in the hotel room, the 5th morning came, a sliver of sunlight, now not moonlight, sunlight, pierced through the marginal divide of those 2 heavy blackout curtains. And I had a moment, and this is what I credit to that which is greater than me, where I thought I heard, Mom, and I had assumed it's one of my kids, they're in the room. And I looked at my kids and they were out cold, chest rising, chest falling. And it was just a moment that I got snapped out of or snapped back from what felt like that cliff, that panic attack, like I'm going over the edge and it's going to feel even worse. And that moment was like a thought interrupter. And I was able to kind of step out of that. And as I said, it took me months to move forward. But what I came out of that hotel room with was a sense of surrender. And it wasn't a sense of surrender in the way of, I'm done, I quit. Because that to me still wouldn't have landed right. Surrender to me meant I let go of what's no longer working. The speed and intensity and judgmental way is no longer working. I don't want it. I'm going to make room for something else. I don't know what that something else is, but I'm going to choose adventure over uncertainty. And I'm going to take small steps to move towards it. So I did end up leaving that job. Like I said, it took me a few more months before I pulled the trigger on that. And then I got real still and real quiet and real reflective in the context of my life. And what I did was I accessed the higher level of my brain that had this menu of choice, that had creativity. And I landed in this brand new business, which you now know that I love. I just ooze it all day long, and I can talk, as you can tell, all day long about it. So I hope that you take away, knowing that you are not alone. If I can be of resource to you, I would love to have a consultation with you. There's no cost involved. This is about getting to know and understanding a little bit more about the process of coaching and how you might step into a better version of yourself. So if there are questions or comments, I'm wide open to that. And I just want to say I really appreciate your time today.
Joanne, thank you so much.
My pleasure, Joe.
I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. Yeah, that was a very nice talk, very nice speech, very nice and long.
Joanne,
Gotta work on dialing it back.
I want to thank you for your guidance. I'm glad we recorded this, because this is going to help so many families, including myself. Sometimes we need to hear this from someone other than family. An outside person gives a different light on things, and that's so important. I cannot thank you enough. I know this is going to, because we recorded it, it's going to reach people that needed it. And I got a lot out of it, because as someone who's older, every day I wake up, I am so grateful that I get to see another day.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so important. And I think that the fact that I can share that, and that we can share this as a community, it's going to be so helpful. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, those words are very well received and appreciated, and it makes me feel really good that you feel that way. And my faith tells me that for whomever needs to hear the words, that they will land for them, and in a way that provides some comfort. So I appreciate you reinforcing that. And I want people to know, again, if I can be a resource and have a conversation to have a sense of direction or a sense of peace, that's why I signed up to do this health coaching business. This is what my life is about. It's about impacting other people in a way to have them step into a better version of themselves, one in which they're destined for, and returns them to who they authentically are.
Okay.
I want to
Thank you,
take this
Joanne.
opportunity to thank Joanne and Toya and everybody for joining us on the call today. I think that it's important for us to, keep it up and keep this message alive.
Yes.
And we do this on a weekly basis, which is really wonderful. Joanne and Toya have joined us on a weekly basis to kind of discuss topics that matter to people right now. So this was a wonderful topic to discuss, and we are coming up with additional topics every week to continue with this learning and understanding of what's going on right now for everybody.
Yeah, Jamay, if I might just add to that, because it's an important point to take away that, when we learn stuff, that's a part of it. That's a really important part of it. We do need information, but we need to put that information into action for there to be a difference in our lives. And that's where having guidance and support around action steps come into play. And most importantly, accountability. How to ensure that the action steps that are going to make a difference actually happen. That's the accountability. That's a substantial, significant part of coaching, but we can have accountability partners in each other. So moms can team up, dads can team up, friends can team up to keep each other accountable to what it is they say they're going to do. That would be helpful.
And you can count on us being here every Tuesday to do that as well.
Yes.
Joanne, real quick, I got a private message from Judith who joined us, and she said that this is a wonderfully informative meeting, and you are so honest and open, and she would like for you to share your contact information so that she knows how to get in touch with you.
Sure. Am I putting that in the chat?
Sure. You can put it in the chat, say it out loud, whichever is fine.
Okay. To get in touch with me, 2 ways, 3 ways actually, but email is jhoustoncoaching@gmail.com. Houston is like as in the big city in Texas. jhoustoncoaching@gmail.com. My website is www.houstonevolution.com. www.houstonevolution.com. And I have no problem. My phone number is on there anyway. So my phone number is 917-912-6127. And I'll put that in the chat as well. 917-912-6127.
Okay, is there any other thoughts or questions that anybody would like to bring up at this point? We could definitely kind of have Joanne speak about them, or if there's something that, you know, that Joanne didn't speak about that you're interested in a topic, we'd love to hear about that as well. So feel free to let us know. Either you could speak up now or chat, or let us know through social@tiegerman.org. Well, I would like to take this opportunity to again thank everyone for participating in the call. And we hope to see you again. We do this every Tuesday
Yes.
at 1:30. Go ahead, Toya, you take it away.
Okay, well, thank you. I want to speak to Jamie after we finish because I have to do a pledge Karen asked me to do a pledge. But thank you for everyone that joined us. I hope you got something out of it. I know I did. Thank you.
I hope you